Clarke's funeral. Turns out it wasn't Margaret in the casket, and what happened next has left the family devastated.
Everybody in that room thinking that they're saying goodbye to my mum, and it's not her.
It feels like it was robbed from us.
A daughter's heartbreak.
I never got to say goodbye to her. I never got to give her my letter. I never got to give her that last kiss on her head to say goodbye. Sorry.
Diane de Jager attended her mother's funeral only to see a complete stranger in the casket.
It wasn't even her.
If that wasn't bad enough, the family was then asked to proceed with the funeral and pretend the person lying in the casket was their mum and nana, Margaret Locke.
It made me feel sick there. I didn't want to be there. How can you say goodbye to your mum when it's not her? So I said goodbye to this lady. I said, rest in peace, old lady, and I hope you find your family.
How can you pretend that that's your nana when it's not?
Margaret Locke was a loud, big-hearted great-grandmother who always said it like it is. She was a volunteer, a nurse and a devoted mum of 4.
She was a great mum, really. At the end of the day, she was a great mum.
Aged 73, Margaret died in an Adelaide hospital on Monday, July 25. A week later, she didn't make it to her own funeral.
If we didn't go and have a look, we would have thought that was our mum that we were burying or cremating that day.
Diane had prepared herself for one last goodbye, deciding to view her mother's body before the service started.
I was the first to see, and I said, that's not mum.
But what came next floored Diane and her family. The funeral director didn't believe her.
He said, that's definitely Margaret. She was tagged as Margaret. And I said, this is not my mum.
Diane then forced to pull out a photo of her mum just to convince the funeral director.
I said, on the 6th time, this is my mum. I know what my mum looks like. And then I got my phone, I zoomed the face in, I put it next to the lady in that coffin, and I said, that is not my mum.
What happened next haunts Diane. Loved ones packed into the service at Adelaide's Enfield Memorial Park, others watching online, all unaware Margaret wasn't in the casket.
But most importantly, going to share in the celebration of the life of Margaret Ann Locke. Marge, of course.
None of that eulogy really sunk in or hit me because I wasn't really listening properly.
Diane's husband, Stephen de Jager.
And to not remove the body or the coffin that's standing there and still go on with the service is pretty hard going.
Margaret's grandson, Jesse Thatcher, is still distressed by the ceremony he calls fake.
Angry, confused, didn't want to be there, didn't feel real.
What's even more disturbing came at the end of the funeral.
Before you leave the chapel today, and after the immediate family have paid their last respects, you'll have the opportunity to do the same. And you simply do this by placing some rose petals onto Marg's coffin as a mark of respect.
One by one, mourners said goodbye at the side of the casket.
The funeral should have been postponed. Waited for the right body to be there, so then it was done properly.
The family say they arrived here to view Margaret at least 25 minutes before the memorial service began. Ample time, they say, for the bodies to have been switched over.
They could have got mum there, delayed the funeral. He could have cut her funeral short, or the next people just that little bit late.
They say options just weren't offered by the funeral director.
I feel like he used the vulnerability of the moment and just pushed us and pushed us.
The funeral company responsible advertises as a family-run operation. It's been in business for 16 years.
A Clarke family funeral treats your family with dignity and respect without the worry.
Clarke Family Funerals told A Current Affair it's working with Margaret's family to reach an agreement on compensation for the mix-up.
And we're not in it for the money or anything like that. I mean, a refund's not going to do anything, really.
For the record, Clarke Family Funerals has taken full responsibility, saying we fell well short of our own high standards. We acknowledge the distress we have caused by our error and sincerely apologise.
I don't want anyone to go through what I'm going through. It's breaking my heart, like...
Explaining what happened, Clarke Family Funerals said due to the distance between our funeral home and the location of the service, together with the number of people attending, the decision was made to proceed with the service as planned. This decision was made under the stress of the situation, and on reflection, we should have sought a different outcome.
He said when they picked the two bodies up from Larmaquin Hospital, one of the tags fell off of the body bags and it must have been put on the wrong one. And that's how the mix-up happened.
As a funeral director myself, it would be my worst nightmare to hear family say those words, that's not my mother.
Adrian Barrett, President of the Australian Funeral Directors Association.
Wrist tags should be attached clearly with the person's name, through to then placing that person's name into the mortuary register. Then when the person's prepared for a funeral, there should be a check on their identification. Should something like this happen, the first thing that would need to happen is that the funeral service should be stopped.
We bought these flowers to put on the top of her casket, and it seems like it was a waste of money because it wasn't her. They were bought for her. They had purple in them because that was her favourite colour.
An urn has been gifted to the family, and Clarke Family Funerals insist it's Margaret's ashes inside.
It wasn't Mum on the funeral day. How do we know it's Mum in that urn?
A family broken by a day it will never get back.
It would be nice to have another service.
She's probably having the last laugh on us now, thinking, like, what a mix-up.